This is track 15, Blinking Back Tears. Hey creatives, I'm C. Jordan Blacara, and welcome to the Whispering Worth to the World podcast. I'm a master certified life and artist coach who specializes in working with creatives. This is where I share what I would tell my younger self if I could, what I've learned about the art of being human, about our inherent divine equality, and how it all relates to navigating our creative expression in the world. Here's the scene. It's about 10 years ago. And I am in the lobby of the private art school where I used to work. And the offices, the front desk was located very centrally between all of the studios. And so we at the front desk, the administrative staff, I was the director of administration, we were rubbing elbows with the students all day long. On any given day, probably we saw 80% of the students come through the lobby, which is where we were located. And so we had many conversations with the students. And I am in the lobby one of these days, speaking with a student, and I can remember this moment and the feeling. And what is happening is that my eyes have welled up with moisture, and I am blinking back the tears. I am embarrassed. I don't think that it is appropriate for me to have tears in my eyes. We are not discussing the death of a loved one or a deep, dark secret or something heavy. We are not discussing that. The topic of conversation is something very mundane, like traffic or their vacation plans or how their vacation went. I know that it is something mundane because this is a type of moment that has happened in my life during my 20s, my 30s, my 40s. And for some reason, my eyeballs are watering up during an interaction with a person, and my response does not feel acceptable. It doesn't feel appropriate. It doesn't feel warranted by the conversation that is taking place. And so I can remember standing there in the lobby, the argument in my head, which is number one, the first concern is stop the damn tears from falling out of my eyeballs. This is ridiculous. Look normal, look normal. It's like I would blink back the tears and I would be repeating this mantra in my head, subside, subside, subside. Moisture, tears, go back from whence you came, like recede back into the tear ducts. Just absorb back into the eyeball. Anything but have the tear fall. I might even be saying, here we go again. Not again. Don't be weird, right? And so this would be happening inside my head. Meanwhile, the person's yak, yak, yak. The person is talking to me, and I've got this whole internal dialogue going on, and I would get through it and a tear would not drop. So based on my sheer will and blinking and commanding my eyeballs, I would not shed the tears. But that fight, that internal fight about all of that would be going on, which is basically hide it. This is not okay. Look normal. And so often I hope this person in front of me, whoever it is, does not notice that this is going on for me. So how do I get from that person to the person? If you've listened to a prior episode called The Manicure, how do I get to that person who is me crying for 40, 45 minutes in a public place, getting a manicure? And again, for some undescribable, seemingly unwarranted reason, just sit down, the person starts working on my nails, and here come the waterworks. And I'm okay with it. And I stay there, and I am not telling myself I'm not acceptable. This is ridiculous. This is not normal. Look normal. I do not have the fight inside of me of this is not acceptable. So I just wanted to, in the manicure, I talk about like being there for myself through that experience. And I was there for myself without this fight. This is not acceptable. This is not normal. Now, let's go fast forward. That lobby scene was 10 years ago. So let's fast forward to about 6 weeks ago when I was in the middle of a session with a client where my eyes watered up and a tear fell. And when a single tear falls down your cheek, it tickles. So I wiped the tear off of my cheek and probably pretty much thought, oh, that'll be indecipherable. We're on Zoom. So that tear, it was just, oh, look, she probably was like flicking away an eyelash. I didn't think it drew much attention, but no, the client says, wait a minute, stops the session. Wait a minute. Are you crying? And I said, yes. And then they asked why. And I've been thinking about this. I think this might be the one and only time, other than the manicure, which was pure waterworks, where the tear actually fell. That in all of the other circumstances, I was able to blink back the tears and I was able to have them subside. But in this instance, a tear fell. I wiped it away. They asked me if I was crying. Yes. And then they asked me why. And before I tell you the answer to that question and the rest of that story, here is what prepared me for that moment. About 8 or 9 years ago, maybe it was even after that particular instance in the lobby, because I remember that instance so clearly where I finally decided after 20 plus years of having this experience periodically in my life, in interactions with people. The other thing I should say is, right, it's just a random student. This could also happen at the grocery store or the bank teller, or it's not like it was my closest friend. This only happened with my closest intimate circle. This part of why it felt so unwarranted is that it would happen with, how do I say? I don't want to say insignificant people, but what it felt like was that the relationship that I had with these people did not warrant the level of emotion, apparently, that was welling up inside of me. So I decided I was not going to spend any more of my life energy fighting this characteristic about me. I'm not going to hide it anymore. This characteristic, this experience that I have, this attribute or aspect of me is not a character flaw. It does not make me less than, and it does not need to be hidden. I can let it be. Whoever's in front of me, when it's happening, gets to think whatever they want about it. As for me, I accept this about myself. And from this point forward, I will not fight with myself over this. And so then I went on, and that was an enjoyable experience to not be fighting with myself, because that experience would happen periodically in my life. So there I was on Zoom with a client, not thinking it would be that noticeable, but it was apparently, because I got questioned on it. And I remember my answer started with, from the question, why are you crying, was, if I'm taking my best guess, here's why I think. And I explained it. And it's a fascinating question. Why do we cry? Why in all those moments would my eyes water up? Why would something about that conversation or that person or that moment or the cocktail that was that conversation and that interaction with that person affect me that way? And I'm not even sure that I have the best language for that I can explain that very well. And in a moment like that, when you're trying to explain yourself, understand yourself, especially kind of off the cuff like that, I don't think science can help me in that moment. And that is foreshadowing to the next episode. There's no 2 + 2 = 4. There's no 2 + 2 = this is why a tear dropped out of your eye, Jordan. So I do remember shortly after that questioning, and maybe after I took my best guess about why I had cried that tear, there was a pregnant pause. And what I can say is that in that pregnant pause, I had no idea what the look on their face meant. I was searching my brain and trying to figure out what that meant. Was it looking for a sarcastic comment? Was it kind of surprised by the lack of artifice? Something in between, something else? Don't know. Kind of a fascinating look on their face, but it was a pregnant pause. But I know what wasn't happening in me was that I wasn't telling myself, I'm wrong, I'm weird, this is unacceptable, I wish they hadn't noticed. Dear God, make this moment pass. None of that was happening. In fact, there are 0 things wrong with this moment. There are 0 things wrong with that tear. There is nothing going wrong here. So there I was in the now, just waiting for the next moment to unfold. So this reminds me of Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter, who said, I have already settled it for myself. So flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free. And what I did years ago was I reconciled this aspect of me. I accept this, that this randomly happens to me, for me, through me, and I will not apologize when it happens. And because I had reconciled that for myself in that moment of being questioned about the crying, which I can't even remember ever happening any other time, I was quite free. I was in that moment. This is okay. I'm here. Think what you may, say what you may. I will attempt to explain it to you, and your move, like in a tennis match. So here are a couple other things that I have accepted about myself. 1, I experience shame. When I believe I'm not enough, I am wrong, there's something wrong with me, I experience shame. When I first heard what shame was, which is the feeling that you get from believing I am wrong, or said differently, there's something wrong with me. Actually, before, when people were like, oh, people, it would be great if people understood their shame. And I'm like, sure, you mean all those other people that experience shame? Because I don't experience shame. I don't know of the shame of which you speak. And then when it's broken down to me, I am wrong, there's something wrong with me, I was like, oh, note to self, I experience shame. Oh, that's what I've been experiencing all these years, all these decades. So I accept that I experience shame when my brain offers me there's something wrong with me. Also, I have experienced trauma. When people started talking about trauma, I'm like, oh, all that trauma that other people experience, not me. My childhood was fine. Nothing rises to the level of trauma. But then when it was described to me, defined for me, trauma is when we experience something that was beyond our capacity, our ability at the time to handle, we experience trauma. So the result is trauma when a person is experiencing something that is beyond their ability to handle at the time. Oh, yes. When you put it that way, I got me some trauma. Yes. And another thing I've accepted about myself is that I do not like alcohol. I just don't like the taste. So when I first turned 21 and started being out in public places, restaurants, bars, social situations where alcohol was being consumed, I didn't want to drink, but I got brushback for that. I just wasn't interested. 7-Up was fine with me. I was not interested in alcohol, but I got questioned. Why aren't you drinking? Why don't you want to drink? You should drink. I got cajoled into drinking, and I went through years and years and years and gyrations to order a damn alcoholic drink so I could just be part of the group. So I think it comes down to all of those gyrations for a person who does not like the taste of alcohol, trying to convince themselves to like alcohol, that it was because it threatened my sense of belonging. Oh, they're brushing back. They don't like this. Oh, they don't like when there's a person in the group that doesn't drink. I did not know that. I didn't know that that would be problematic for them. It's not problematic for me, but it's problematic for them. And so I would do things like I did study abroad in Ireland. And I, of course, curious. What is this Guinness that Ireland is so famous for? So I drank Guinness in Ireland. I thought that was fun and that was cool. And lo and behold, I was like, I think this is a beer. Like if I need to pick an alcoholic beverage, this is a beer that I could drink back in the States. But the truth is, even that, it's the best thing I could say about any beer that anyone is raving about. The best thing I could say when I taste it is, oh, that's maybe the least offensive beer I've tasted so far. That's the best thing I can say about beer. All right. And alcohol. So I was always drinking like daiquiris and strawberry margaritas and like, would you please make it a little bit of alcohol? And would you please disguise the taste? Because I don't like it, but I will order it and I will drink it to fit in. That's what it is. I want to fit in. I want to belong. I want to be part of this group. And then came a time when I just said, I'm done. I don't like alcohol. I'm tired of taking sips of drinks that people try and convince me, oh, this one, Jordan, you might like this one. This one is sweet enough or mild enough. You might like this one. I decided I'm no longer using my life energy trying to like alcohol when I do not like alcohol. All right. So here's the ramifications for artists. I mean, if I can go years and years and years blinking back tears and not accepting that part of me, that has ramifications. That has far-reaching effects. So for an artist, I hear it all the time in our Create Anyway collective. Artists are trying to be the right kind of artist. They're trying to be either more abstract with their work, and then they realize, I don't want to be more abstract, but I've been spending all my time trying to loosen up my art because I thought the right artists, the good artists, were more abstract with their art. If you write songs, will you allow yourself to write the lyric exactly as you want without blinking back any lyrics? We have artists create a series of their work and they work with a concept and they come and there is usually a concept that they want to express, but they blink back the concept. They blink back that expression or that aspect of themselves that they don't think will be liked or acceptable if they were to paint that specific series. If you want to talk about climate change and your work is going to be dark and you don't think darkness is going to be acceptable, you might not paint it. Or if you do paint it, you might paint it 80% in your full expression, 80% of your full expression, and you blink back 20%. Or do you decide you will not address the climate change? You will do a series of landscapes instead, because that's more pleasing and that's more palatable. And you think that will be more accepted if you were to create that series instead of that dark, ominous series infused with your full artistic voice on climate change. And so what you have done is you have blinked back the entire idea for the series, not just a portion of your expression, but you have decided to not even pursue that and swivel and tilt and go a little bit off kilter from exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it to a completely altered subject matter. Mountains, skyscapes, oceanscapes, landscapes, but not that series about climate change in just the way you want to paint it. Maybe you want to talk about trauma and healing and quote unquote dark things. And you might do that series, but maybe only 90% and you blink back 10% of your expression in that. Maybe there's a story you want to tell. Maybe there's some research you want to do. Your artistic voice, and that's not just for painters, your artistic voice as an actor, a musician, a director, a writer, a dancer, a choreographer, sculptor. Can you allow yourself the freedom to be in your full 100% expression, or are you blinking back a certain percentage or a certain aspect or attribute or experience that you have that you want to flow through your creations, but you're not allowing yourself? Like me in the lobby, you're blinking back the tears. You're blinking back your true, authentic experience that you're having or message that you want to infuse into your work, but you're blinking it back. So I think not just artists, not just creators, humans so long to be themselves in our totality, to express ourselves, and to hopefully be accepted for who we are. Are we allowed? Will we allow ourselves to be ourselves in our full expression without blinking back the tears? And I think so many people are on the spectrum finding their ways through this question. So next week, I'm going to talk about 2 additional areas. One where I have accepted myself. It came to light, interestingly, in the same session with the same client. And then one where I have just crossed over the precipice, just crossed over the threshold in accepting this aspect of me that I have been in a fight with, and that I am deciding that no longer am I going to use life energy to fight this aspect of me. Stay tuned. I'll see you next week. Hey, creatives, want to learn more? Go to www.createanyway.today/about.